In yesterday's video, I spoke about why Blizzard need to actually put a little bit of effort in and start getting some content out in Cataclysm. Now, the comments varied. Some of you were like, yep, we're ready for Dragon Soul. And then many others was like, no, we could do a little bit more time in Firelands because we've only recently started progressing on Ragnaros. Which is absolutely fair enough. But there was one thing that kept coming up in the comments, and people even reached out on Discord afterwards, and that's about server consolidation. Now, we know there's a few things that they've done both on the Anniversary Edition and back in Season of Discovery that, in my opinion, worked really well, and I even praised Blizzard for it back then. And those things were forced faction balance on PvP servers, and then, of course, just making sure that there's as few servers as possible. So all of the servers that are available actually feel like they're populated. Now, when we look through the Cataclysm servers, obviously that just is not the case. We've got some real big mega servers like Gehennas, Firemore, Mankrik, which Mankrik's where I play, by the way, Fairlina, Golemag, Everlook, Benediction, all of these really busy servers where you're going to have a pretty good time finding raid groups or GDKPs or even arena partners to do PvP with. Most of them are pretty much one-sided. Now, this doesn't do the game any good because actually we're missing out on a really big part of it, especially if you choose to play on a PvP server. Choosing to play on a PvP server where there's zero PvP, which I know most of you actually want. You want to play on a PvP server because there's loads of people there, but at the same time you don't want a PvP. Well, coming up to Mists of Pandaria, there's certain areas where if you enjoy world PvP, it is absolutely amazing. In the first phase, we're going to be out in the world killing Shah and Galleon, which can lead to some pretty good world PvP. Same when we get Throne of Thunder, Isle of Thunder's released. It's quite a small place, everyone sort of questing and doing their dailies and running around in the same zone can lead to some really good PvP as well. There's actually a lot of good open world PvP potential in Mists of Pandaria, where in Cataclysm, okay, you've got Tol Barad, which you go and do your dailies, and if you're on a balanced PvP server, which looking through here, it's very hard to actually find one. Oh, Grobulus US. If you're on Grobulus US, then you might actually have a really good time doing the Tol Barad dailies if you enjoy world PvP as well. Now, outside of that, the other really core reason that I kind of cling on to is imagine you as a new player. If you're a brand new player coming to try World of Warcraft, which believe it or not, there's lots of new players coming and trying Cataclysm, especially because of the Anniversary Edition. Those that sort of thought, oh yeah, I'll come and try World of Warcraft Classic now because, you know, there's all this OnlyFans hype and all of that around hardcore. They probably tried it, thought it was a bit slow, and they was like, well, I've paid for a sub now. Let's try Cataclysm out. These people are not experts. They're not going to even look at the server selection probably. They're just going to literally load into the game. They'll be chucked on a server. They won't know where to check whether it's Horde dominated or Alliance dominated. That could lead to a really bad experience if they happen to pick the wrong faction on the wrong server. That's potentially a sub loss for Blizzard, just by having such imbalanced servers, because they'll have a terrible experience by not being able to find anyone on their faction to actually group with, where having balanced servers just completely would eliminate that. And there's also one other thing that is actually due to happen in Mists of Pandaria, but I question whether Blizzard will actually do it or not, but I actually really like it, and that's more or less going everything cross-server. Now, this is something that they experimented with early to the point where now, obviously in retail, everything's cross-server, everything's cross-faction. It makes getting groups for things really quick. It makes using the Raid Finder tool in-game really quick because you've now all of a sudden, you're not just choosing from a server's worth of people, you've got everybody to choose from. So making pugs, making GDKPs, everything is actually just so much better when you're doing it cross-server. This is something I'd like to see sooner rather than later as well. I would probably pug a lot more on my alts if it was very quick to make groups. If any of you have not played retail, you won't understand, but for those of you that have played retail, you will. You can more or less... Someone's at the door. You can more or less just jump on, find in the Raid Finder tool an actual sort of item level appropriate group, click, apply, they invite you, done. You can literally be in a raid in minutes. Whereas in Classic, it's not quite like that. And that all stems from not being cross-server. I'm not saying cross-faction, that's probably a bit too far for Classic, but everything should be cross-server, and it should definitely be encouraged. Everybody should be encouraged to use the Raid Finder tool. Why people don't use that, I have no idea. Or at least no one uses it on Mankrik, and I do question why all the time, because it's actually a really good way of making groups. Now, going back to the servers, with so many having such low populations, you would think that it's in Blizzard's interest to shut these servers down and save money on server space, or however it's done. So this is definitely something that in the lead up to Mr. Pandaria, I'd actually like to see happening, because I actually think Cataclysm's got a very healthy player base. Nearly 130,000 people raiding, although some of those are alts, don't get me wrong, and some of them will probably be PvPing, but nearly 130k this deep into Firelands is pretty good, especially for a version of the game that was apparently dead on arrival. So yeah, it's doing very well. I mean, back in Tier 11, it was over 300,000. So of course, as new content comes out, especially new expansions, it spikes. And this is where I think Mr. Pandaria will be different. I think Mr. Pandaria will hold people for a lot longer. People tried Cata, they was like, I'll give it a go, didn't like it, and then maybe never came back. But they may come back to try Mop. And trust me, Mop's content is just absolutely out of this world, as in the amount of content that comes with each phase. It's not like Cataclysm's been, where we got some raids, then we got a couple of rubbish dungeons, then we got 7 boss raid with some dailies, and then we're going to get an 8 boss raid with 3 dungeons. The amount of content that we actually got over these phases is absolutely terrible, like the worst ever expansion in terms of new content per phase. Whereas Mr. Pandaria, every phase is going to be banging and literally teeming with content. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. Server consolidation absolutely has to happen. So there's 2 things I've said Blizzard need to do this week. Firstly, give us some content. Secondly, let's start looking at server consolidation. And while I know many people who play on PvP servers only play on PvP servers that are one-sided because they've got the most people, I would also enforce faction balance on PvP realms, but give people the option, when you do these server consolidations, to actually move to a PvE realm if it's not PvP that you want. That way, the PvP realms are there for the people that actually want a PvP, and the PvE servers can be one-sided. Everyone can decide, right, this is going to be the mega server for Alliance, this is going to be the mega server for Horde, whatever you want to do, and everyone just bundles on that server. But the PvP servers have enforced faction balance. I will be here for it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, as you always do. Tell me why Cataclysm's dead and why Mop's going to be a massive flop, and I'll see you on the next one.